If you want to take a logo from something like this and animate it to look like this, then you came to the right place. Today, I'm going to walk you through how to animate your business or brand's logo in After Effects. This specific logo was sent in by Ashley Johnson from Shape Education, so a quick shout out to her. Disclaimer though, animating is not a fast process, so I know this tutorial is going to be longer than most of our videos. Roughly the first 14 to 15 minutes are about how to get the logo ready in Illustrator and Photoshop to bring it into After Effects, where we will actually do the animating. So if you want to skip that part, go ahead and just go to this timecode right here. But for the rest of you, buckle up because here we go. Okay, so I actually was testing out doing some of this in Illustrator and decided that Photoshop is going to be the best for us. So we still have to have the logo pulled up as an Illustrator file. It's going to be easier for us if it's pulled up in Illustrator first. But we're going to open up Photoshop and do a new project, new document. And I'm going to do this 3840 pixels by 2160 pixels, 72 pixels per inch with RGB color space. And you don't need to worry too much about this, just leave those as they are. And click Create. And just to help us on this first layer, let's go back to this black and white. And whatever the lower color is, if you do Control or Command Backspace, it'll fill the whole board with that. So that's just going to be our background, and we're going to create a new layer. And now let's go into Illustrator again. Control or Command C to copy it, and Control or Command V to paste. And we want to do a smart object. If you do pixels, if you expand it or reduce it, it's going to be pixelated. So it's best to do smart object because you can adjust it later. And it's going to let you adjust the size. I hold Alt or Option on a Mac. And let's fill up the screen there. Take up a good amount of it. Okay, so the concept that I came up with for this logo is I like how this triangle has this unique little river going through it. And so I thought it would be cool if we could bring this triangle back into a normal triangle without these little frills coming off of it and without the river, and animate in this. I think that'll look really cool. A little complicated. I already found out in Illustrator that it'd be more of a challenge than I want to do. So hopefully it's going to be a little bit easier for you to follow along in Photoshop. So the smart object is our full logo. We'll keep that as a safety. And let's just do Control or Command J to duplicate that layer. You could always right click and do duplicate layer as well. And then we'll just do safety logo. And let's press the I and we'll come and click on the lock. That way you can't mess up that one. So here's where we are going to rasterize the layer because it's going to make it more adjustable for us. And let's start by making some new layers. So we're going to have one layer that's just the shape logo. And then we're also going to break that down into each individual letter. So let's do this as shape. And we'll go into our rasterized vector layer, do the select tool, the rectangular marquee, it's set to a fixed ratio. Let's go back to normal so it doesn't do that. And let's just go over the whole thing and do Control X or Command X, and then do Command Shift V or Control Shift V, and that will make sure that it copies right in place. Hey, just wanted to pop in real quick to tell you that I had originally spent some time separating each letter of the word shape into its own layer, but later realized that we didn't need that, so I'm just going to skip through that part to save you some time. All right, let's get back into it. You don't really need to animate every letter of every word or it'll just get redundant. So let's go back. Let's go up here, create a new layer, and we'll call it education. And let's go back to the vector and do Control X or Command X, Control Shift V. So now we have education on its own layer with all the other layers, and now we can get to work on the hardest part, which is the triangle. So we'll call this backup original triangle. Me again, I just saved you another 40 minutes of trial and error. I originally wanted to build out the triangle using the current gradients that were in there, but as much as I tried in both Illustrator and Photoshop, I just couldn't match it well enough, so I decided this would be an easy and more effective way of doing it. Let's create a new layer. Let's go up and we're going to grab the pen tool and do Control plus or Command plus so we can get right on the point here. Let's go right at the tip of there. Let's go here. And again, we don't need a stroke right now, so click on stroke and do the white with the red line through it. And let's go on over and let's click on this corner. If it's not perfect, you can go back, do Control Z or Command Z. That's close enough. And let's go up and click there. So what we've done so far is just made the triangle shape. And actually, just to make this easier on us, let's not try to do the gradient because I think that's going to cause us more of a headache later. So let's go up to the fill. We're going to do this color selector. And let's just get something right in the middle of that gradient. We'll choose that color. And we've now filled with a color that looks pretty close. So now we have just a regular triangle that's really going to help us to build out that animation that we've talked about. So now that we have the triangle, we need to be able to isolate these two little flourishes so that they're not there to begin with. So what we're going to do here is take this original backup and let's do Control or Command J, and we're going to do that twice. We're going to call this left one, first one left flourish, and right flourish. So now that we've done that, what we can do is we can do Control or Command click on the triangle shape layer, and it's going to do that selection for us. Now let's hide that, and let's hide the right flourish layer. So what we want to do now is basically just cut out all the stuff that's in there. So what we're going to do is just click delete and also hide that so that we can see. All right, so you have those two flourishes up there. Now do Control or Command D to deselect. And as you can see, the triangle wasn't perfectly covering. So what we want to do now is take the eraser tool and we're going to go and just get rid of these lines. Because this is the left one. Actually, even though we already made the right layer, I'm going to make this a little easier on us. Let's not erase this part yet. We'll do that. All right, so delete this right flourish. We're going to click on this left flourish and do Control or Command J again. Let's change the name to right flourish. Now hide the right flourish one again. Click back on the left flourish. Take that eraser and just get rid of that right one. And now click off the eye of the left Go back to right, make sure you're clicked on. We'll get the eraser, and now we have those two. So if you pull up our completed triangle layer and make that visible again, double click just outside the text on the right layer. And we're going to do a layer style and click on color overlay. And we're going to choose that color from the triangle. And now let's go to left flourish. And we're just going to, if you hold Alt or Option over this effect, you can drag it onto the left flourish. So now when we do the animation, they'll all be the same color. Sometimes based on the selection, you'll get this little teeny gap. And so what we're going to do here is let's just go into the left flourish. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on that paintbrush, make sure that it's a hard edge, and just kind of paint right over that line. And then on the right flourish, we're going to do the same thing. Okay, awesome. So we're getting close. I know it's a lot of prep to get us started, but here's what we've got. We've got the main triangle. We have a couple flourishes, and it doesn't really matter that this edge is rough because you won't see that earlier. So we have those, and now what we need to do is we need to create a shape that we're going to use later for the river. So let's go back to, let's hide all these layers. Let's open up the backup original, and let's create one more layer above it. And we'll call this river layer. Okay, so here is where we need to get as precise of shape as possible. I'm doing Control plus and minus to zoom in if you don't know that. So let's click right on that corner, and we're going to come up and click and hold and drag out the curve until it matches as close as possible. That was pretty good. And so now we're going to click up further on the line. And you can see there's a little bit of a gap there. So come back and click Alt or Option and just bring in this one handle up. Bring it until it matches as close as you can. All right, again, let's hide that stroke. We don't need the stroke. And now let's click here. And we'll extend it out even though we don't really need it to. Let's extend that there. I'll probably speed this up a little bit so you don't have to watch me do all the curve. And just to give us a little more headroom to make sure that it is all the way there, we'll go around. So now we've created our river shape. And just to make it a solid, let's go in here and let's just give that some bright color. It doesn't really matter what color it is because we're going to be using it later. All right, so now I think we should have enough layers to work with. Let's go in, and I always like to bring all the eyeballs back open. I should have saved this a long time ago. That was foolish of me. Don't make that mistake. No one likes to spend a long time working on something and then not be able to work it. So we're going to go in here and call this logo animation. And we will save that. Now once that's saved, let's close that out. Let's go into After Effects. All right, now that After Effects is open, let's just do New Project. We'll right click in this project folder, go to Import, go to File, and let's pull that up. So back where you saved it, let's go click on that, and then you're going to want to do Import as Composition Retain Layer Sizes, and click Import. And you want it to be editable. So click OK. So if you right click on the composition settings, it will have the size that you had, which is Ultra HD or 4K. And then you need to go to duration. Usually I like to make it long. So we have it in 24 frames per second, or if you don't know, usually that is written in the United States as 23.976. Weird, yes, I know. You want to click that 24, but don't. So then let's go to that duration. And for me, I usually like to make sure that it's at least a few minutes. So this is 10 minutes, 10 seconds, and 0 frames. So now that we know that that's good, let's double click this. And here's our file. So let's come back in here. Let's go to all of these, click and select them. If you click on the T key, that'll bring up the opacity. T for opacity, I know that's weird, but T is for transparency. And let's just bring those down to 0. That'll give us a clean slate. And let's start with our triangle. So completed triangle. So we have that triangle, and what I imagine will be a good start is let's just take, if you click on the S key, we can do scale. This right here is the anchor point. You want to grab this pan behind anchor point tool, grab that anchor point, and if you hold Control or Command, it should bring it to the middle of the shape. But based on the size of this shape, and I will bring it down just a little bit. That looks more like the center of the triangle. And that's where it's going to scale from, do any of the changes. So now we can get back to the pointer tool, and we'll click on the stopwatch, do 0%. If you press F9, that's going to help it to be a more smooth transition for the keyframe. And let's move on over to 20, go to 100%. Actually, we're going to make it 115. And then we'll go another 5 frames and do, let's say 90, go 4 frames more, 105, go 4 more frames, 97, go 4 more frames, 101, and go 4 more frames, and we'll do 100. So what we just did there is gave it a little bit of bounce. So let's go back and click the space bar so you can see. So that's a little much. I think having it decay like that makes it feel too cartoony. So let's delete some of these keyframes and go back to this one and just make that 100. So now it should just pop up, and we're going to move that and have that be a slower. So it goes up, up quick, and then fades into that space. Now, hopefully this isn't too technical, but if we select these, we can go into the speed or the graph editor and zoom in a little bit, and we can click on this, and let's take this point and pull it over here. And so essentially what that's saying is we've now changed it so that it's going to scale quicker in the beginning and then finish slower. So if you watch it, it's going to come in soon and then fade slower. And then what we're going to do is get out of the graph editor. Okay, so we have the triangle come in, and I'd say only a few frames after, we're going to take the river layer. So let's bring this river layer over the completed triangle, and let's make that 100% opacity. And what we're going to do is create a track mat. I won't explain too much what a track mat is, but essentially when we go to the triangle layer, the layer that's above it can be a track mat. So if I select alpha mat, it will only show that shape within the shape that was above it. But if I do alpha inverted, which is what we want, it's going to now remove that gap. So that's the river. So we're going to take the pen tool. We're going to go here below in the middle on the river layer. And we're going to follow this path down the center to the best of our ability. And we're going to keep that going on. Let's bring on those flourishes. Where are the flourishes? So let's turn those flourishes on and go back to the river layer. So this is way too far. So delete that, and now we just want to essentially follow, come on, there we go, click back on there. Let's follow this all the way up there, a little past those flourishes. What we've done there is just given a defined path that we can make a stroke follow. And we'll go over to the right into the effects and type in stroke. And we're going to drag the stroke effect over onto the river layer. And we're going to go down to paint style and say reveal original image. And you're going to see that disappear. And now we want to take this brush size. So somehow it's still viewing this as a shape itself. So we're going to want to go to mask 2. So it's just based on this central path. And we're going to take that brush size and we're going to go all the way until it fills up that entire space. And 200 is the largest, I guess. So let's drag this central. And let's take this point there. Oh man, that's close. Of course, that had to be right at the limit. Okay, so now what you have is you are able to animate along this path. So what we're going to do here is you have this end. So right now it's at 100%. If you were to drag the percentage down, but yeah, so let's take it down to 0. We're going to click the stopwatch, click F9 again, and we're going to go about probably 10 frames. Let's go to 12 just to be safe. And let's bring it to 100%. And now what we're going to do is kind of a similar thing, but on the flourishes. So let's go on to the left flourish. And to make it so it has a similar pace, let's go back to that frame. Actually, let's do it here so we can see it. We're going to go here. This one really doesn't have to be as precise. Okay, so that's about the same length. So again, we're going to go into the effects panel, get the stroke, put it on the left flourish, reveal original image. We're going to go to brush size and bring it up until it's full again. And now let's take this down to end. Let's undo that. Let's bring it back to this point. Do end start watch, click F9, and then do 100. Oh, again, I'm doing a terrible job at saving. You need to learn from my mistakes and don't do that. Let's call this logo animation tutorial. And so now, let's see how that does. Let's click on there. So you see, because we made the paths similar, when that river gets to the end of the triangle, right then is when it's going to start those flourishes, and it's going to feel like it continues on with it. So next, let's go into the right flourish. We're going to do the same thing. So now if we play this back, yep, it follows the path. So if we go back to the beginning, here's what we got so far. And so I think for me, what I lean towards is having that happen a little quicker. Because right now it feels like the delay is just unneeded. So to do that, unfortunately, you have to open up the effects, open up stroke, and we're gonna, let's see, when does this end? So we're going to go back one and click on these and drag them to there. Now we have to do that for each of the effects. So let's do that. Animation is a lot of trial and error. You're going to try things and really have to tweak them to best suit your needs. All right, let's do Controller Command S to save, and let's take a look at that, see how that looks. So it fades in, and then I think that's much nicer. One more time. The more times you play it, the better feel you'll have. Okay, so that was the hardest part of the animation. Hopefully you're still with me. I honestly don't know how long this tutorial is going to end up being. So because we weren't able to keep their brand colors, that gradient in, right when we transition to the full river in there, we're going to go down to the left flourish, hold control, right flourish, complete triangle, and we're going to click on T, do it twice if it doesn't come up, and we have the opacity there. Click on the stopwatch and do F9, and then move forward, and actually also click on the stopwatch below on the backup original triangle and do F9 and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And let's make this one 100%. And let's bring these down to 0. And so what that should do is it will give us the nice animation. And actually, what we probably want to do is it's giving a weird transition. Sometimes if you take the lower layer that you're transitioning in, have that start to transition in, since you shouldn't really see it anyway. And so when it does that, and we can maybe even slide all of that a little, select everything. Let's move them over. Let's move it over 4 frames and see if that works. And maybe just make this a little bit slower. Yeah, so that feels much more gradual. Hey, this is the last interruption, I promise. While we were animating, I made a version where I animated each letter of the word shape, but I found that it was visually overwhelming and decided that we didn't want to use that. So I created a duplicate composition and then continued on after that step. So that's why you'll see me, as we jump back into this, delete a bunch of individual letter layers. So you're not going to need those. Don't worry about it. Let's just jump right back in. We're going to make one more copy. So if you go up into the project and go Command D or Control D, let's go into Logo Animation 2. We're going to do something crazy. And let's take all those letters that we worked so hard to build and delete them. And let's go to the shape layer that's still there. Bring the opacity back up. And we're going to do something called a pre-comp. So let's take, we like how that intro for all that is. So let's take all of those and let's right click and say pre-compose, which means it just puts it into a composition that you can use all as one thing. And we'll say triangle animation. So now that whole thing happens here. And what we're going to do is remove this keyframe. We are going to pre-compose these two, and we're going to call it text pre-comp. So we only have two elements here. So what we're going to have happen is as this fades to color, we're going to have this shape reveal this text. And we're also going to have it start in the center now and then move into that. So let's do that quickly. So we're going to go on over and see where the right before, if you hold Control or Command and do the right arrow, you can go one frame at a time. And we're going to see, oh, I see an error there. We can fix that. Right here is when it starts changing colors. We're going to click P on here to pull up the position, and we're going to click on the stopwatch and click F9, and let's drag this over 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to move that about 8 keyframes over, 8 frames. And then on this one, we're going to click on it, and let's just drag it pretty close to center frame. So now it'll do its animation and then slide over. And again, like we did earlier, let's do a quick speed. So we're going to click on this one and drag over. And that's just going to make it a much more interesting. That's too fast, though. We're going to drag this out longer. There we go. And so essentially now we need to build another shape to make a track mat to follow that. So what we're going to do here is build a big shape that follows this triangle edge. So go to Layer, New Layer, our New and Shape Layer. We got our pen tool, and let's click on that front little corner of the triangle. Click there. So those are the only 2 points that need to be precise. And then you can just make this giant shape that goes like that. And we're going to go here and click on the text and go to alpha inverted. So that means that we want it to show up outside of that shape. So what we're going to do is similar to the other one. So we're going to take this shape, position. We're going to try to just select those 2 points and see if that will work. It did not. Sometimes that happens. But what we can do is copy that, go to the beginning, and let's just drag this over until it's at that edge. And now if we go to the end, it's still on that edge. Perfect. So now it'll pop up and then drag. Our last step is we're going to need to take this text that we have, click on the position command, and let's click the position stopwatch, click F9 again. Let's drag that here because that's going to be the finished position again. And let's drag this all until it's behind that space. So now that's not going to be visible at all. And we're going to do the similar speed graph that we did on the last one. So it all has a similar feel. So now we should have a near finish animation. Let's watch. Okay, something feels a little off. I think that movement at the end is what needs to be moved back. So let's get all these movements and go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's move it back about 8 frames. I think that's it. So that there is a pretty clean animation. It takes just under 3 seconds, so it's not going to be too long or distracting. And it doesn't animate every single element and get you bored. You may be bored with this tutorial because it took a long time to do. We do have to do one quick fix. Sometimes you'll realize that, hey, we faded in the backup triangle too early. So if we go into the triangle animation and we go here, we're going to go to where that starts to fade. Backup triangle. Let's pull up the opacity. And we realize that it really can't start until here. So if we select this and move it over, let's see if that works. And now let's look at the final. Yeah, there's always small things you can adjust. I mean, even just going in here, and if we select these 3, click on the T to bring up the opacity. And if we made that transition, start, hold shift to do this, start a little bit later. Yeah, then it isn't as noticeable. All right, I'm so proud of you for making it this far. I know this was a long tutorial, but hopefully it was helpful for you. There's a lot to it, and if you've never used an Adobe program, I'm sure this was pretty difficult. But I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this. Let me know if there's any other tutorials you'd like to see, and we'll see you next time.